And perfect, we're live. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for joining us today. I have Ryan Williams. A little bit of backstory about me and Ryan. We actually started working at Ashley Furniture together, which was as retail sales associates. That was the first thing we did. We were just salespeople. I never really got into sales in my life. Ryan was already there when I got there, but we just started at the square one, and after 2 years, ended up being a store manager and sales manager. So we spent a couple good years together working and getting to know each other, and you became a very close friend of mine. So I thought it was only right to bring you on the podcast.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on today, man. I'm excited to hear everything you got and your perspective on things as well.
Absolutely. Well, that's what we're here for, baby. We love it. We love it. Well, first thing I want to talk about was obviously when we were working together, one of your biggest goals was to move to Idaho and get it out of Oregon. You grew up in Oregon your whole life and you moved to Idaho. And obviously now you've officially accomplished that dream. So, what has kind of been some of the biggest differences that you've noticed between the two states?
Well, one thing I would say is a lot less rain, which I love. I do not like the rain. And the other thing too, as well, is it's a very conservative state as well, which I tend to lean more conservative in my values, I would say. So that's been nice. I feel like people, I don't know if it's the sun or what it is, but people seem to be a lot more friendly here than I was used to in Eugene and things like that. So I would say just those things, those have been huge, in terms of positives for sure. Then also just being closer to a lot of my family that have lived here for a long time and not really getting to see them that many times. Um, yeah, maybe once a year, if that. So it's been nice being able to hang out with them more. Um, yeah, and just definitely cheaper. So that
Mm,
is one nice thing,
yeah.
which I'm sure you probably experienced with your move as well. So
Yes. Kansas City is definitely a little bit cheaper. I do miss the no sales tax though. That's something I do
yes.
miss all the time when I get that random, especially if you make a big purchase. Like say it's over $200, then you're taxed like $20 or whatever it is. It's just like, dude, it's ridiculous. So I do miss that about Oregon. But you're right. The rain definitely can get down on you. I would say here in the spring it actually rains quite a bit, so it does remind me of Oregon, but not. I mean, obviously nothing compared to Oregon's. But that's awesome, man. I know Idaho was always on your radar, and obviously my brother's out there, and he loves Idaho. He absolutely loves it. So,
Yeah.
he's more in the Nampa side of things. You guys are you living in Boise, or where are you guys living at?
Yeah, we're, like, right on the, border of Boise and, Garden City,
Okay.
but whenever I tell people that, especially people that live here, they're always like, "Oh, Garden City," like, I guess it was, like, not good 10 years ago or so, but now it's becoming they're building a lot of new things here and things like that, so it's nice because 'cause we're not in the city, but we're just, like, honestly about 5 to 10 minutes outside of it, so it's nice. We just get to drive in, a lot less traffic as well, I forgot to mention that. I know Eugene not as much, but Portland area, oh my gosh, yeah,
Oh, yeah.
it's way better here, but I do miss the beach. That is the one thing I think
Mm.
that's the same with you as well, we've talked
Oh,
about
yeah.
that is the beach, for sure. Did I miss the beach a lot, just being able to drive an hour, hour and a half to go to the beach, that is, for sure the number one thing I think I miss.
Yeah, and I've always been a cold front beach kinda guy, so yeah, Oregon was the perfect one where it just felt so good. It's such a good environment, so I miss that too. I miss the mountains more than anything now, obviously being in the Midwest where there's just the plain fields and I mean, there's just nothing. There's no I mean, we got some trees in Missouri more than Iowa from where I grew up, but nothing crazy. I mean, nothing like that. So, what is some? Are there any like? I saw you guys on did a couple golfing. Have you got Madison into golfing now? Is that a
Yeah,
thing?
yeah. I
That's
just got
awesome.
her a new set of clubs today too. I just
Ooh,
ordered them. Yeah, she loves golfing. I didn't think she'd like it, and so I was like, "Ah, whatever, I'll just go with the boys or whoever." And no, we went with my uncle and my aunt. That's one thing we have been doing lately is golfing with them. Oh, yeah, she loves it. But now she'll have her own set, so she doesn't have to borrow my cousins. But yeah, I was gonna say it's been nice because now if she goes, then I get to go more. So it,
amen.
yep.
That's awesome. You know, even Darian, my wife, when we were And when I was going golfing, it's like just being outside is so relaxing and just
Yeah.
being there. That's what golf is about, honestly. I mean, no one's trying to make the PGA Tour tomorrow. Like no one's
Yeah.
out there, trying to, get birdies or anything. We're just there to have a good time and enjoy the environment. So, I think that's what golf's all about. And when people start to realize that, it's so much fun. And
Yeah.
that's 100% been one of my things that I've used in the last 2 years is a relaxer and just clear my head. And because if you're not focusing on golf and you're focusing on other things in your head, you golf like shit and it's terrible and it's not a fun time. So you have to just wipe your brain and just completely focus on the task at hand, which is a lot of fun. So I think that's awesome. And well, speaking of Madison, obviously that's kind of the elephant in the room. Uh, I won't go into too much of a backstory about it, but all I want to say is I'm super happy for you guys. I think that's absolutely amazing. I'm so glad that you guys found your person and obviously you get married and do all the things like that. So,
Yeah, thank you,
but
man.
tell me more about it. Tell me, how's been the married life? Obviously you went from a single guy to married pretty quick. And so,
Yeah.
what are some of the changes, some of the things that you've noticed since being married?
Um, the one thing I think is just I don't think it was that hard for me, honestly, just because I am a person that likes to be, I guess, more boring of stuff, and or I guess with things like not doing. I do like to go do things, but I just feel like before I was always like wanting to do this or do that with friends all the time. And so that has been one big change is just not hanging out with friends as much, which is honestly nice because sometimes I would just go hang out with people and I would just do it just because everybody was like, "Come on, come do it," type of thing. Because I do love hanging out with friends, but I'm more of a person where it's like, okay, maybe once a week type of thing. Um, because I don't know, I like to be at my house and just kind of around the house here, not super far and going and doing a bunch of things. So that's been one change I think is just not hanging out with, like, my friends as much, but, in return, I guess, we've kind of been just hanging out with my family since my family lives here and she lives with my family, so, but that's been nice, though, honestly, for me, but I would say another thing is just learning more, you know, about, 1, being married, but also 2, about, you know, your person, just about what because you're not dating, you're not, it's definitely different. Some people just say, "Oh, it's just a label," but I definitely disagree with that. I
Yep.
think it's, a huge thing, just learning, like, compromises and all that different stuff as well too, which might be surprising for you, but honestly, she's been way better than, she
Oh,
used to be, I think, with stuff like that, so,
that's
and
good. That's very good to hear.
yeah. Um, and with me as well, I think that I've compromised on a lot of things as well, and I think that's avoided a lot of arguments about whatever it is, money, anything like that. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, at the very beginning, I think it was hard. I think there's a lot of um, stuff that we were like not compromising on, but I think as we've gotten farther into marriage, and it hasn't been that long, you know, I think that we've just grown in that way of just learning more about how to just navigate things. And yeah, I mean, I know that everybody's relationship has ups and downs, but I feel like after the first little part there of getting kind of used to it, I would say,
Hmm.
because it did feel super weird at the beginning. I don't know about you when you first got married, but it just doesn't feel real, I guess,
Yeah,
because
it's
I
surreal.
always used to think that I always was like, I don't even know if I'm ever gonna get married. So, um, yeah, I don't know. It's something new, a new experience that's not something like a vacation or anything where you're like, oh, this is cool. We came here, but this is just something that you know you don't. I don't know. You don't think about it until it's actually happened. I feel like so.
Yeah,
Uh,
I
but yeah,
think that's amazing. Marriage is supposed to be your built-in best friend, you know what I'm saying? And so that's great to hear that you guys, get along great when you're not doing anything because I
yeah,
think that's one of the biggest humps that young couples don't taken for factor. Like, it's so fun when you're first dating or like you're a couple of years into it and you're just doing all kinds of things. You're going all over the place, vacations, trips, that and the other thing. But when you're married and like you said, you're settling down, you're saving, you're trying to make plans, doing all these things cohesively as a unit, it's not all about that. It's not all about the fun. It's about the reality of life and taking on the challenges of life together. And
Yeah.
so there can always be, a speed bump in the road with that. But I was with you, man. When I first got married, even though I had been with my wife for 7 years before we got married, it was like, oh, this is it. Like this is my wife. And so, but it's in a good way, in a great way. It was just one of those things that you realize it's like, oh, this is it. This is now what my new reality is compared to beforehand. So, but you're right on the money. I think when you have a built-in best friend and you're just doing things together, whether it's literally sit at home watching TV show or just doing chores together, it's like there's nowhere where else you'd rather be. When you're with your person. Obviously hanging out with the boys and doing things with the boys is awesome. No one's gonna knock time with the boys, but it's not the same. It's just not the same. So
No.
I think that's awesome. Well, what do you guys think then? Is your plans for the next 5 years, would you say? Is there anything that you guys are trying to, I know you talked a little bit about the house. Is there anything else that you guys have kind of sat down and laid out over the next 5 years you want to accomplish together?
Yeah. Well, to be completely honest, when we first got here, Madison was working at Ashley. She worked at Ashley here, and then I was working at my job. It's called AmeriCorps, and so it's pretty much sales as well. And we were making pretty good money at the beginning, and we were not budgeting at all. That was one of the things at the very beginning. We were just blowing all of our money, and so now within the last couple months we've definitely been like, okay, we need to be disciplined, we need to stop, like, just realizing how much money we actually were spending every month. It was insane because I was like, there's no way, like there's just no way that I'm spending an extra, whatever amount of money on this. It's not just me, it's her as well. But um yeah, it's just realizing that, and realizing if we don't stop doing that, we're not gonna get to, how we wanna save for the house, or, even her new car, things like that. Um, and then also, um, yeah, I mean, we'd love to have kids as well too. We wanna have kids. We're trying to wait till we get in the house first so we have
Wait
some
as
more
long as you
room.
can, my boy. Wait
Yeah.
as long as you can.
But you never know. It's can be unexpected as well. So,
But yeah.
but yeah, we would love to. I think those are our main goals in the next couple years, is house and kids. Honestly, nothing crazy. No. I mean, we'd like to start something, whether it's a business or something like that as well. We haven't really pinpointed that down yet, but I think the number one goals, number one and number two are definitely the house and kids. Um, but yeah, I was gonna say, other than that, we just want to try to be smarter with, especially putting into retirement and things like that as well, to making sure we're putting um, money in
Mm,
investments as well, not just saving. So,
yep.
um, and that my job has definitely helped a lot with that, because before I thought I knew all this stuff about, saving and
Mhm.
investments, and then I get to this finance job, and I'm like, okay, this is completely the opposite of what I thought. And I'm with a bunch of people who did like mortgages for 20 years, and financial advisors and stuff. So a lot of them have helped me a lot with just trying to like build a plan and things like that as well too. So it's been cool. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm right there with you. When we always like to think of ourselves as financial gurus when we were running the furniture store. Like we
Yeah.
were like, oh, we're telling people what to do with their finances, where to go with this, and then I was the same way. Where my wife literally one day I just said, "Hey, I'm gonna put this in an Excel sheet and we're gonna go through it." And she's like, we don't spend that much money. There's not, we're making good money, whatever, whatever. And it was still just an absurd amount of money. And it's like she's like, "Where's it going?" I go, "Well, you're doing like 1,000 on Amazon. You're getting a coffee every other day. We're going out to eat 3 times a week." Like, it just, things
Yeah.
like that where it adds up so fast.
So fast.
And to your point, yeah, if it's great when you're making money and you're spending it, but at the same time, that's not, always how it's gonna be. Unless you have a stable salary job that you're never gonna leave ever again, that
Yep.
money can fluctuate no matter what you're doing. So, we were the same way, yeah, where it was, I think, last August, I finally put it in an Excel spreadsheet, and we've done it ever since, where we budget, like, everything. I mean, it's just literally broken down to bills, so on and so forth, and so that's a big step. I think that's a big step in a relationship, is to acknowledging the budget issues, and then making it work, because I mean, financial crisis are like one of the leading things in divorce in the country. So that's
Yep.
always one thing that gets brought up pretty early in relationships, is the money thing. And a lot of people can't handle that conversation. So it's very important to get it out ahead of time. So, but that's awesome that you guys are thinking about it proactively, because it'll nip you in the butt, especially if you go to pay that house and like, oh, we're gonna need a $12,000 deposit. And you're like, whoa,
Yeah.
I don't get that. So, um, but that's awesome. I'm glad you're figuring out life together. I think that's amazing. And if you guys are blessed enough to have kids, like I always said, I never knew if I was gonna have kids, and now I got two. So it's
Yep.
just that's how life gives you, different things. But I'm stopping at two. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah.
That's enough. We've had our fair share, and we're good to go. So, um, but that's for a different time. So that's awesome, man. Well, let's go into some of the questions that I actually had brought to the table beforehand, and see what kind of gets your opinion on some of these things. What emotion do you find hardest to understand about yourself?
I think probably anxiety. Um, I as you know, I talk a lot, and, I feel like I just can't ever sit still. So that's been one thing I think that I've been trying to kinda figure out, just because it's something I've dealt with my whole life, and I'm worrying even when I don't think I'm worrying, like, subconsciously as well. So I think that's been a bigger thing, because before I was kinda like, "Oh, I'm not worrying that much." And then I'm like, you know I'm probably worrying a lot more than I think I am, because I'm worrying about these small things while I'm awake, and even while I'm sleeping, like grinding my teeth, things like that. So I think that's probably been the hardest thing to understand, about myself in terms of emotion, just because I don't really understand why I'm anxious a lot of times. So, um, yeah. What about you?
I've always thought anxiety was a really tough one for me as well. Only because I never had it for a long time. I know I've told you some history of like my back stuff, and for the longest time, I was such a confident guy, and for the most part, am still too. But when I am not confident about something, and then anxiety or even stress is one thing where I'm a happy-go-lucky guy. Like if the sun is shining and I got breath, I mean, it's a blessing in my opinion, and so
Yeah.
I don't try and stress over things. But when stress and anxiety come in, I don't have a clue how to handle it. And a lot of times I don't handle it well. A lot of times I reserve to some drinking habits or something like that. So, especially after my back, when I can't physically do a whole lot of things anymore.
Right.
It was really easy to turn to just having a couple drinks, or, getting on with the boys and like, oh, we're having playing games tonight. Let's get a couple beers, so on and so forth. But I think that's definitely the two things: stress and anxiety were emotions that just really I struggled with a lot. And trying to understand, like you said, how to understand them. Like, why do I feel this way? And a lot of times when you take a step back and you kind of look at the overarching problem, you realize that you're creating your own anxieties. You're creating your own stresses, because at least for me, it was procrastination. A lot of times I just procrastinate about things where it's like, I know this is coming up. All right, well, I'm gonna wait another week or two. I don't have to do it right now, right? I can do that a week or two. And then when it finally gets to the point where it's like, now I'm just building up a ton of stress, unneeded stress, when I could have just handled this or taken it on a little bit earlier. Those are definitely some things that I struggle with. Trying to get better at those. Anxiety is definitely, I've found through anxiety, meditation is my best tool, and that if I'm ever feeling overwhelmed or stressed and anxious about something, just go outside and just take deep breaths, and then just close my eyes and just be present in the world, and just realize that all your stresses, your fears are just made up in your own mind. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's nothing really that crazy going on in life. You can just go outside, take a breath, and be like, "Oh, we're just people. We're just doing things. Who gives a fuck?" Like, why does it gotta
Exactly.
be so
Yeah.
serious all the time? So, is there anything that you found to kind of help control your anxiety?
I think, a big thing for me that I have really tried to, use, at least in the last couple months as well, is, I think prayer. for me, honestly. I think prayer has been a big thing, and just realizing that, yeah, kind of what you said, things are not they're not as big of a deal as we make them in our head. Um, and especially I think the one thing that I definitely worry about is future stuff. I'm always just like, oh, the future, this, and it's like, it's not. I don't believe it's really in my hands. So I think it's like, you have all these plans. I'm gonna do this, this, and that, and then it's like, even 6 months down the road, it's like your plans have completely changed. You know what I mean? Like, even for instance, I know when we were talking when we were working together, you're like, I'm moving back to Iowa, and then, the next week you're telling me you're moving to Kansas City, and I'm like, "What?" I'm like,
Uh,
so yeah, I just think it's always good. I think there's certain things, that you should be like, "Okay, I'm gonna be disciplined in this," where, whether it's like savings, investments, things like that, where it's like, for the most part, like, if you're working, I know that my investment of my 401k is going to be coming out of that check every week, every 2 weeks. But it's like something where it's, we're planning on doing this, we're planning on a house or, X, Y, and Z. It's like, you know, in 5 years, I could be not even here anymore. I could be in North Carolina. I could be in Oregon again. I never
yeah,
know. So I just feel like, one thing for me, I believe is just that, God has plans for you, and it might not necessarily be the plans that you have. So it's just kind of like, plan your things, but don't, they're not 100% set in stone. They're always changing. So
yeah.
yeah,
I think that's awesome. It's always good to have goals. I mean, that's a very important thing. But you're absolutely right. I think I always say it wasn't until my daughters where I didn't, just take it day by day. Whether it was, at sales where it was like looking at a forehead for the month budget, year budget, quarter, whatever it was. I was always living my life one step, like two steps ahead of itself. I wasn't acknowledging the present. And then when I have my daughters, it's like, dude, you only get this time for so long. Like, my daughter's already 2, and so when I see my newborn and then look at my 2-year-old, I'm like, "Where'd all that time go?" Like, it's already gone with my 2-year-old, and she's only gonna get bigger, and now I have a newborn, and there's a lot of anxiety and stress that come with a newborn where you could just throw your hands in the air and go, "Oh my god, this is so overwhelming, there's so much going on," but, um, I'd rather take it the other way where it's like, "I'm never gonna be able to do this again. Like, this is
yeah,
it." So, I think when you can kind of take that psychology and flip it on its head and work it into your daily life, it's so beneficial. It's so beneficial. And so I think that's awesome. And especially if you can take the time to, I always like to correlate prayer with meditation, where it's basically it's in a sense, it's just, for instance, with prayer, you're reaching out to somebody. With meditation, you're just trying to find an answer through yourself. It's kind of that deep thought out questions of how do I get better? How do I better myself? And so, I like either way. I think taking the time and just being in your own head is a very important thing to do for people, and that's kind of why I like asking the questions that I do on the podcast because I like people to get into their own heads. A lot of times, people want to, rely on the phone to go doom scroll when they're panicking, or go,
right.
go work out or do something that just ignore the present. But I think it's very important to get in deep into your own brain and kind of pick and choose and figure out what's actually going on and how do you handle those stressful and anxiety situations. So
I
I
agree.
think that's awesome. Um, what is something you once strongly believed in but eventually outgrew?
I don't know how controversial I could be on here, Dylan, but
Oh, I once mentioned how I was homophobic, so by all means, go crazy.
okay, so I think the biggest thing, I'm sure we've talked about this as well too, but is definitely politics.
Mm,
Um I Yeah, I wasn't voting when we were talking about this last, I'm pretty sure as well too. But like, I just don't vote. I don't vote. I don't believe that voting, at least in, like presidential elections, things like that, um, is necessarily making a difference. I think that politicians in general, they both don't like us, no matter if they're right or they're left. Um, and I don't think that they, you know, have the best interest of the people, no matter what. I think they're both trying to stuff their pockets and, um, you know, in terms of like legislation, they're trying to pass things that are going to help them and their friends, not humans, not the people,
Yep.
in terms of taxes and sending money wherever they want, and money disappearing and all that stuff. So I just think that I think that's probably the biggest thing for sure is just political stuff, just because it kind of wraps so many things into it as well, because they can make legislation about whatever. So um, yeah, I think there's just been a lot of that, and I think it just continues to get worse as well. Just with um, I'm not a huge fan of AI. I
Mm,
really don't like AI. I think AI is a dangerous thing that's being used to usher in the surveillance state.
mm,
But that's one of my things. I think that is another thing that's being regulated by them as well, or like the whole thing with just like data centers and things like that as well. I think there's a lot of things that are happening. Um, I mean, there's some pretty deep stuff, I guess I can get into that I probably won't get into on here, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff I think just politically that people are revolving their whole lives around, in terms of they're so worried about it all the time. They're
mhm,
so, you know, oh, this guy's good and this guy's bad. Donald Trump's way better than this guy because, you know, his best friend is funded by this I mean, I just think that that's how I used to be. I used to just kind of revolve my life around politics, and um it would stress me out a lot. I would
yeah,
stress a lot about it, and I would think that, you know, Joe Schmo's telling me this and it's the truth, and then the other person, everything they say is just the biggest lie of it all time. And I think that they're both a bunch of liars, so I just I don't really bother to entertain it anymore. And I think since I've kind of stopped doing that, that's also helped with a lot of stuff as well.
yeah,
And just kind of focusing on family and like the things that I think I'm still involved with certain things that are happening. Like if I don't think that something is good, I've been looking into going to like town hall meetings, things like that. Doing the things that I feel like I can make a difference in,
mm.
especially locally. Um, but yeah, I know that was a lot. So
No, that's awesome, and I always like to mention on the podcast too, we talked a lot about politics, I don't mention politics too much on the podcast just because, like you said, it's completely out of our reach. I mean, no matter I'm just an average guy just trying to live an average life, I'm not trying to change the world, I'm trying to put good out into the world, and that's great, but, no, I think it's just, from I know you're a little bit younger than me, but from when me growing up, politics was never talked about. Like, no one ever brought it up. No one talked about it. It was always religion was a big talking point or like just, local things going on. And then I think it's just this warp of social media where now everyone can say what they want to say and they can hide behind it that now politics seem to be this the biggest discussion point on the planet. And I'm like, it's just silly to me. It's politics and government and everything else are made up rules. They don't apply to life. Like life doesn't have anything to do with politics. It's you live in a certain place and then this is just the way that they have made it. Like they say this is the law. And so I don't see wasting my breath on that. People are going to do what they want to do. At the end of the day, we have a constitution and we have to follow it. And if you don't, then we can't, go about our ways. So, I don't like to talk about it that much because, yeah, I like to talk about it individually and, see different people's point of views. But from a general stance, I don't take any political stance at all. I'm like, if you believe what you want to believe. And I think it would be way healthier for our society in general to go back to your position is at the ballot box and that's it. You don't talk about it to anybody, you don't bring it up. If you wanna talk about it with family and close friends, that's fucking awesome. Do that, but there's no reason on God's green earth that you're going out and putting yourself in the middle of social media and going, "I believe in this, and fuck you if you don't." It's like,
yeah,
what are you doing? Like, it's
Yeah,
just so ignorant to me. And so, I'm right there with you where it definitely, I think it's they target the youth too. Yeah, they know that the youth will get involved, and especially when you're younger, trying to find yourself and find an identity, it's so easy to get that mingled in. And that's when you look at most of the people that are activists or out protesting. It's not a bunch of old people. Sometimes it can be, but that median age is going to be people who are young, and then some are like the super old people. And
right.
it's everybody else that's just working and living their life. They're just trying to be normal people. And I think that's what we should all strive to do, is just live normal lives, live the most successful that we can, and not worry about all the other bullshit that goes on. So
Yeah,
I'm right there with you. I am. Um, but yeah, we had lots of good conversations about it,
yeah, we
especially
did.
living in Oregon. But I still think that's the craziest thing about Oregon that nobody understands, is that it is a blue state, but it's fucking not. Like, there's 3 cities and that's it. And then like everybody's just like, oh, that's the most whatever place, the most hippie place on the planet. I'm like, Eugene
Yeah,
is
yeah,
100%.
uh-huh.
However, you go anywhere else in Oregon, it's just not that way. So anytime I've told people here that I live in Oregon, they're like, oh, well, of course. So I don't
I
know if you
know.
noticed, I chopped my hair off, so I don't have long hair anymore.
Well, I thought you did, I thought it was just back behind
No,
there.
no, I chopped it off. But when I first moved here, and I obviously have my tattoos, and I would like go into people's homes with long hair and tattoos, and I tell them they're from Oregon. They're like, "Oh, well, that makes more sense." I'm like, "Not everybody looks like me out there. I promise you. They look more like you, honestly." So, which I just always found funny. Everybody has their own presumption about Oregon, but I'm like, it's just not that way. It just wasn't. Especially living in Albany and all the other places that we went to, even
Right.
Springfield. Like, it's not that way at all. And so, um, it sucks that their whole system is built on just the select few, but that's why they lose people all the time. That's why they lose good people like us. But hello, everyone. I'm excited to announce our new sponsorship with West River Whiskey Company. West River Whiskey Company started as a dream in the summer of 2020. While working with Indian Motorcycle, the owner, Joel, made great friends with some key executives at Jack Daniels. They successfully opened their business in April of 2021. They started their journey off with Jack Daniels products, and after just 6 months in operations, they were approached by a business partner, Gordon Oman of Black Fork Farms Distilling. Over the last several years, they have built the West River and Black Fork brands, introducing the world to South Dakota bourbon. Starting with just a handful of bourbon styles, they now proudly pour and sell over 15 different bourbon products, as well as Black Fork's top vodkas and gins. In 2024, West River was named Deadwood Business of the Year by a group of their peers. They strive to give back to the community that has given them so much, as both Joel and Don proudly serve on the Deadwood Fire Department. You can find their website link in my bio, where you can get direct access to their merchandise. As always, thank you for your support and enjoy the rest of the podcast.
But I know in
What are you going to
Idaho,
do?
moving here, it's one of the reddest states in the whole country. So it's, you talk to people here and they're like, you tell them you're from Oregon and they're like, oh, okay. But if you say you're from California, they automatically are like, get out of here because,
Nope.
yeah, they do
Yeah.
not like, I mean, which I'm not a huge fan of most Californians, I would say as well, just living in
Yeah.
Oregon, how many that came there. But
True. Very true. I can't yeah, we haven't my brother bought a house out there, so I have not been out there yet to see his house, in Nampa. But I've been to Idaho multiple times, and it's a really cool state. And so, we're trying to get back out west, I think. I think that when we moved to Kansas City, it was the right thing to do at the time with the kid, and obviously we had another kid. And like my parents are coming in a couple days. They come down every month. Her parents were just here last week. Like, we see family every week, which is
that's cool.
amazing. And
Yeah.
in Oregon, we never saw family. Like, we
Yeah.
just never. I think my parents came out twice in 4 years, and just they're busy people and so on and so forth. So, but I definitely think my brother's in Idaho. He's bought a house and he loves it out there. So somehow finding a way to get closer to you guys is always kind of been in my big picture. One of my other brothers is about to graduate from pharmacy school, and he wants to go try out maybe Idaho as well, or at least give a couple months before he makes any big decisions. And my sister, she likes Idaho too. So, you never know at the end of the day. But at the end of the day, what I always tell my siblings is like, I want us to raise kids together. Because I think I told you, I didn't have cousins growing up. I didn't have a single cousin growing up. So
Yeah. I
it
remember you
was
saying that.
just me and my siblings. And so to give them the opportunity to not only be close to my siblings and raise kids together, but them have cousins and have built-in best friends and all those things, it can build a big family. So, um, we'll see. But I definitely will be in hopefully Idaho within the next year, and be able to come out and see you guys. That'd be freaking cool, and show me
Yeah.
around Boise a little bit,
I
of
love
the
it, bro.
Boise.
It's not a it's not a huge city, but it's the biggest city we have, and it's not like any other big city that you'll probably ever be in anywhere in the United States. It's just not it's not a normal downtown. It's very
Mhm.
clean and, very few homeless, and the homeless half times don't even look homeless because they give them brand new clothes and things like that. So, yeah, it's not like Oregon homeless people at all whatsoever.
No.
So,
And when I went the one time, yeah, we walked, like, around the Capitol building, downtown, like, everything, and it was just you to your point, super clean, super nice, everybody was there, and we were just walking up and down the streets having a good time. Like,
yeah,
there's
it's chill.
it's so cool. It's a good place to raise a family. I think that's
Oh,
definitely a
yeah.
great place if you wanted to start and, raise kids and be around other people that are like-minded. It's
Very
great.
family oriented place
Yeah,
for sure.
yeah. That's awesome. Well, let's see here. What is the most painful truth you've had to accept about yourself, would you say?
Honestly, I think probably how stubborn I am. I feel like I'm very stubborn, and I sometimes try to act like I'm not, and Madison always tells me,
That was
she's
the
like,
one thing I remember her
"You
saying all
are,
the
Ryan,
time, like,
you are."
"You're stubborn," and I was just like,
So, I
"Oh,
think that's probably the hardest thing, but I think in the last probably year, it's been something that I've definitely come more to just accept that I am stubborn. Um, but I feel like now I'm more stubborn in a different way in terms of um, more like beliefs, I guess, is like or like my values is what I'm more stubborn in now. When I used to just be more stubborn in a lot of just kind of any way, where I was just like, no, if I think this, I'm gonna tell somebody I think this, or
yeah,
whatever. I'm just, oh sure, I'll tell you. I think I think your way now, but I don't. And I think that's one of the things with marriage as well too, is just kind of learning to not be that certain way about the dumb things, I guess, the things that really honestly don't matter,
don't
the
matter."
things that are more surface level for sure. And just like why don't I love to argue. That's my thing. I love to
Mm,
argue. And so that's been one thing I've been working on in the last year or so is just like, don't argue over stupid shit. There's no, you know, leave that for the important things, So, um, yeah, I think that's one thing that I've really tried to work on is not being an idiot and just, just stop arguing about the stupid shit that does not matter.
yeah, I feel you there with the stubbornness because there's just I have certain things that I like to do 'em a certain way, and it's just how I do things. Whether it's folding the laundry a certain way or doing the dishes a certain way, like, just little things, right? Nothing that matters, but you're absolutely right, because that was a big thing with my wife was that she's like, "We're doing it this way, and you're not gonna win this argument." So, it's just like, you just pick and choose your battles. There's certain things you're like, "Alright, fine, I'll do it your way." Like, for instance, with the laundry, I've gotta fold it, like, hamburger style into 3 ways, and then that's the only way I can do my laundry, but obviously, I've never done it in my life, and so there's just all kinds of little things, but that's part of being married, man. That's just you just adapt and do the different things, and so but luckily for me, I call it this is my wife's house and I rent a room. That's how I kinda call things, is it's just I have my game room, I can do whatever I want in here, say whatever I want, but as soon as I
Yep,
go out, this is my wife's house and I live in my wife's house, so that's just part of the game. It's just
yep.
part of the deal, so, I think that's awesome, but I'm really glad. Did you guys ever have, like, a formal wedding, or was it more did you guys elope, or how did everything go down?
Yeah, we just kind of eloped. We just did it was just me, her, the pastor, and then the photographer. That was it. And we didn't tell anybody before. We didn't tell anybody, and then as soon as it happened, the same day, we went to her sister's apartment. She was off that day, and we went and knocked on the door, and we were dressed up, and she's like, "What are you guys dressed like that?" So then we just kinda started telling everybody after. Some people were upset for sure. They're like,
Yeah,
"Why didn't I get invited?" But at the same time, that's another thing. We didn't wanna spend 15, you know, $20,000, whatever, 10, $15,000 on a wedding, but we do wanna have a more of like a kinda just, family thing, maybe in a year or 2, invite everybody out, rent a nice place for it, and just kinda have, like, just a good, get-together type of thing with everybody and just, maybe go over the vows again and things like that. We haven't exactly decided, but Um, but still, not spend just a bunch of money on something like that. We don't really care about spending money on a one day thing like that when, I mean, not everybody, obviously. I mean, like, you guys had a wedding. You guys had a regular wedding. You had people invited, but I feel like nowadays a lot of people just focus on just the wedding part. They
Mhm.
focus on the wedding, and that's, like, the most important thing, is spending all this money on the wedding, and then, it's like they don't care about, then the relationship starts, and then they're like, "Okay, shit, like, what do we do?" "How do
Yeah.
we handle everything?" And then, a couple years down the line, they're divorced, and, then they're going and doing it all over again, and we just don't really care about that. It's just, plus it is a relationship, between us 2,
Yep.
nobody else. So that was kind of our other thoughts on it too, is just like, "Hey, this is what we wanna do." It may not be what other people want, but, sorry guys, it's not your wedding. So,
Yep. That's
uh
it's one of those topics that no matter how good you do it, somebody will bitch about it. Somebody will say, "Oh, I
right.
wish you would have done it one way or another." Blah blah blah. My brother, when he got married in June last year, he did it in Utah, and so he bought just an Airbnb and was like, "Whoever will fly out, fly out." And unfortunately, that excluded a lot of his friends and a lot of our family just because it was just a house that had 30 rooms and. I mean, just can't invite both sides and everybody to do it. So,
Yeah.
but that was my biggest advice to him. Yeah, I was just like, dude, it's your wedding. At the end of the day, if you two want to go into the mountains and never see anybody ever again, that's your relationship. No one else gets to dictate it. So, um, we luckily didn't have too big of a gripe with our wedding, but yeah, we were the same boat. Where literally did it at my grandparents' house for free, and then rent out a barn for $100. C'est la vie. It
Well, that's
was
awesome. I didn't know you guys did that.
yeah, super so the reception was just in a barn. We literally just decorated it with some lights and everything and just got a DJ, free beers for everybody, and everybody had a good time, It was
Yeah.
just like, who cares? And so but yeah, it was my grandma's house, and we did our, ceremony there and only invited direct family. So it was just, I think 30, 40 people in my grandma's backyard, got married, and I had my uncle do the officiating and everything, like, it's just everybody's wedding, everybody's relationship can be so unique that way, and that's
Yeah.
something that you guys will never forget, and that's all that matters, is how you guys did it and that you guys ended up married, and so, at the end of the day, that's all that matters, is that you're together, so,
Yeah.
um, well, let's move on towards kind of the faith and spirituality side of things. I know
Yeah.
talking with Madison and talking with you before we all departed our own ways at Ashley, but I know Madison and you started to kind of go into that side of things with religion and Christianity and everything like that. So,
Yeah.
where do you kind of personally stand on faith, spirituality, and like a higher power?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I would consider myself, Christian, but the one thing that I guess me and you never really got to talk about that is, I feel like sometimes I don't, like, necessarily want to call myself a Christian, because I think that that word has a lot of negativity around it. Because there are, a lot of people, anybody can say they're whatever, right? So it's like, anybody can say they're Christian, anybody can say they're, Muslim, anybody can say whatever. But I think that there's a lot of people that will say, "Hey, I'm Christian," but they don't, they don't act that way, in terms of, and I think that's a really bad thing that happens. Is there's a lot of people that say, "I'm Christian," and then, they'll just go and do whatever. I'm not saying that I'm perfect. I'm a sinner as well. I think everybody does things that they shouldn't do, right? We all lie, we all whatever.
Mhm.
But I think that that is one of the big things, is that there's so many people that say they are Christians, but they don't exemplify that. And I had a discussion with a coworker the other day kind of about that, because he doesn't believe in anything. And he was just kind of curious, he was just asking me, and I said, "Okay, John, so do you believe in sin?" And he was like, "Not like directly, I guess, but I do believe that there are, like, bad things that everybody does." And I was like, "Okay." And then we started talking about, oh, because he goes, "There's a lot more Christians than anything else, any other religion in the world."
Mm,
And I said, on, maybe on paper or, people that say that, but I go, people that genuinely actually follow what the Bible says, I said, is such a small, small percentage of that. I said, and there's way less, Muslims in the world than there are Christians. And maybe not way less, but there's I think it's like the second biggest religion. But I said there are way more Muslims that follow their religion way more strictly than there are Christians ever. And he was like, I could agree with that. I was like, because I see a ton of Muslims that are very, very strict. They pray 3 times a day, whatever it is. They don't eat pork. They don't do this. They don't do, like they're very, very strict in the way that they um, portray, I guess, their religion.
mhm.
You know, there's somebody that can say they're a Christian and they're out there, doing coke off, whatever, like they're out there
Yeah.
just, just doing a bunch of drugs and all this different stuff, right? So it's just like, that's the one thing that does bother me, with that like label, I guess, because there just because you go to church on Sunday doesn't mean that you follow anything about, the Bible, right? So, that's the thing that's been, I guess, more tough, I guess, lately too with that is just, um, the label on that because, I have gotten into my Bible a lot more, in the last, I would say, 6 months, um, but yeah, I really wanna just read the entire book um, because what I was taught when I was a kid, I think that there's a lot of pastors that don't teach out of the Bible what the
Mm,
Bible actually says. Um, and so I think that's another thing is there's a lot of people that don't believe in God or don't believe in Jesus anymore because as they were a kid, they had a lot of religious trauma stuff going on that their, whether it was their parents or just family in general, um, that they kind of ruined that, I think, for them. They made it just out to be this awful thing because they're portraying it in a way that it's actually not. And I think that can be with anything, though. I feel like that could be with any religion. Um, but just for Christianity especially, I think that's been a big thing um, that I've been dealing with. But I do believe in God. Um, and yeah, I wanna get closer, to him and read my Bible, faithfully and, religiously, I guess I should say, and in terms of actually diving into it every day instead of, trying to read it twice a week,
mm.
so, yeah, I just think that that's a big thing. Sorry, I know I kinda went off on a tangent,
No,
about
I
but
was gonna say that seems to be a very popular answer, that it's everyone's kind of in the agreement that the Christianity as a blanket just is so overwhelming. And, like my sister likes to say that she's a follower of Jesus Christ. When people
right,
ask her, "Are you a Christian?" She says, "I'm a follower of Jesus Christ," because that's just the best way. She loves her Bible, she loves to get into it. And that's exactly what it is. The Bible is the teachings of the prophet Jesus Christ. And so if that's what you study and go into, that makes more sense. But I've always said, yeah, that's kind of my biggest knock off of Christianity in the sense that in the United States is it's just too prominent. And the fact that it's just a blanket. No matter where you go, you could be completely agnostic. You don't have to believe anything, but in God we trust. Or like in schools when they had the national anthem or whatever it was, and it says God all the time. And it's just kind of inframed in you that if you grow up in America, now you're Christian. And it's like, I don't think that's fair. I don't think that does anything for it. And to your point, you don't establish a good baseline. You just don't have a good baseline for it. So then everyone's like, oh, you're from America. You must believe in God. And it's like, Why? Maybe you haven't learned anything. Yeah, maybe you go to church and you haven't learned a damn thing. Maybe you
Right,
just learn,
exactly.
with all these different denominations, they can preach all these different kinds of things. And I don't want to put anybody on blast, but like you could have all these churches that are, LGBTQ and all these other things. And it's like, how much are you learning about God? I don't know. I've never been. But it's just like there's so many different denominations. Who really knows the teachings that are being put on there, if it's about God or if it's about their own kind of beliefs? So, um, I had one of my buddies from China. His name's Joe. I don't know if you ever met him in Oregon. He lived in Oregon for a while. He actually was the reason that I got brought out there. But um, he grew up in China, and so basically with China, they have a very blanket atheist, right? So like most of the country just believes in atheism, but I don't think it's a bad thing because then you get to choose your own path. So say for instance, you want to learn more about Taoism. Great, you can go learn about. Well, what about Hinduism? Sure, go learn about like and you can take a different route and start from the base and be intrigued and learn more. Or if you learn the base, you're like, that's not really for me, go to the next. But Christianity, it just seems like you live here. Oh, you now believe in God. Here's his teachings. And that's your baseline. And there's no, and so I think anyone who I've asked about the spirituality and their journey, a lot of times it is that I started as a kid. I was told about it. So I've just believed in it because everybody else is believing in it.
Right.
Then you kind of fall out of faith because you're like, well, I don't want to go heel to toe with everybody else. And then you have to reinvent yourself. So I think it's just this wild roller coaster that everybody's having to go on when it comes to spirituality that we kind of indoctrinate with into our youth in the United States, and I think it kind of sucks because it ends up people going all kinds of different ways, and that's a good thing in a sense that we're all kind of our own person. But I don't know. I just don't like that there's a baseline that you live here. Now you have to be Christian. And then if you don't want to go that route, then you have to basically, because if, like, for instance, with myself, I still claim that I'm a Buddhist. And so if I tell people that, their first reaction is like, you're not a Christian? You're a white man in America and you're not Christian? It's like, "No, I'm not." And, like but that's just such, like, a neat like, a reaction where people are just like they just assume, and that's what you're supposed to be, which I think sucks. I don't think that's fun at all, but that's just my 2 cents on it.
Yeah, I think that, even in terms of the Bible, we all have free will. Anybody can do, they can go and do whatever they want. They can go commit, the worst crime of all time. They can, choose to go to Walmart instead of Safeway, right? Like you have free will and on any level. Um, and that's something that I truly do believe in is, you know, you are allowed to believe whatever you want. I'm not going to tell you what you need to believe in. Um, one thing too that I have um gotten more confident about is just talking about, what I believe in, because a lot of people are just curious, So I'm like, and I used to be super like, oh, I'm so nervous to talk about this. I don't want to I don't want people to like get upset or whatever. But I'm like, now I'm like, hey, it's what I believe in. You don't have to believe in it. I'm not gonna, I can be friends with anybody. I don't care. I really don't care you know, like you believing in you're Buddhist. We're great friends, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so I don't care at all. If anything, I wanna ask you more questions because I wanna know, "Hey, why do you believe that way? What do you know, what exactly are you practicing?" Things like that. Because like, I don't really know a lot about that. So, I think it's good to have conversations with people about that, and, of course, I think it would be great if everybody believed in God, but, that's just not the reality of things, and that's that's your choice. You have free will. So I'm not gonna hate you for it. I'm not gonna, you know, make you feel like the worst person on earth because you don't
Mhm.
believe the same thing as me. But yeah, I think it's an interesting topic for sure of just, you know, I'm curious to what everybody believes because I feel like there's a million different things out there, especially now,
Oh, yeah.
um, that people believe in. So yeah, I don't know. I think that's another thing too is a lot of people that call themselves Christians um, do really like hate on other people having other opinions.
Yes.
Um, and I have never been somebody who I'll be like, wow, okay, like I wasn't expecting that from that person, like how you were saying the reaction from people when they're like, I'm a white guy from America who's Buddhist, like, it might surprise me or something, but I'm not, like, having a bad reaction towards it. Um, yeah, I don't know, I think it's a cool thing when we can have people come together, when people will actually listen to each other, and get to talk about those differences. I think it's a really cool thing to be able to just see what other people believe in, and um, yeah, I think Christianity gets a really bad rap for that because there's a lot of
Yeah.
people that unfortunately um, will not want to talk to you or hate on you or whatever, for thinking something else. But that's the thing. Not if we were all the same, then we would all have we'd all have probably a pretty bad time. But
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah,
Well, and I think I've from doing the podcast and asking people, there's a lot of people that I've gotten answers from where they're like, I want to know more, but I just don't know where to start because there's just so much stigma around it. Like you said, it's just like if you don't believe in the certain way, they're gonna hate on you. So it's like they don't even want to try. There's like, well, what if I go into this and I don't like it, and all of a sudden now I'm shunned for it. And it's just like there's just too much of that going around. So I always say I would love for our culture to get flipped back on its head and be back to the point where we can openly talk about religion with everybody. Everybody be opening and accepting of what they believe rather than politics. Because, like I said, back in the day, nobody talked about politics. And I think that's how it should be. I think you should have your own beliefs, your own system through religion, whatever religion that is. And then,
yeah,
then you can vote and you can be a part of society that way. But I don't think your identity should be revolved around this made up system, right? Where religion is the purpose of faith. You're basically putting your whole perspective of life into that purpose. And that's way more intriguing to me than just because I don't like this person, I'm going to vote differently. Like it just is so stupid to me. So,
yeah.
um, have you had any like experience or have you had any different like events in life that have taken place where you're like solidified you in your belief or kind of brought you full circle to your belief?
Yeah. Yeah, I think, the biggest thing for me was definitely, um, throughout, let's see, started in, I think, elementary school. I had a really big thing with, well, one, like I was saying earlier, the anxiety stuff. But I think the thing was, I don't know exactly how it started, but I had a big thing with food. I would not, somebody at school got sick, they threw up at lunch, and for whatever reason, with whatever anxiety I had, I instantly thought that I was going to get sick if I ate at school now, and then throwing up became my biggest fear. Um, and I genuinely don't know how that, like, came about because I had seen other people throw it before, things like that, but it was just a weird thing with my, anxiety, um, and that was something that I struggled with from, like, elementary to high school, was just eating in general, not even just at school, thinking that I was gonna get sick, um and so I was always super skinny. I mean, I'm not fat, but I've
You're a
definitely
skinny
put on
boy.
some weight since I saw you last time. So, but yeah, I had a huge thing with eating from probably 3rd or 4th grade, I think, up until sophomore year of high school, and I went to, an eating disorder clinic, which used to be super hard for me to say to anybody because I was like, that is just automatically, especially in America, associated with women, right? Is eating disorder stuff, which mine wasn't a normal one. I'm not anorexic, bulimic, anything like that. Um, and so the type that they said I had was like the most rare kind because it was anxiety induced and not, appearance and things like that. So uh, I ended up going to a eating disorder clinic for about a year, in Portland, and I was stuck in there with 99% of them were women. So that was a little hard for me as well because I also didn't have the same, um issues as they did. My issue was different, so that was hard because I couldn't talk about numbers or anything like that. Because if I said a number, they might try to be that weight and things like that. So I went through a lot of that, and finally going to that place, even though it sucked being there. I felt like 24/7, and I had a feeding tube as well. That was not fun.
Mm,
So I basically just had to retrain my brain to be like, hey, you're gonna be good, and if you do get sick, it's not the end of the world. Like you're gonna be fine. So um, yeah, I got out of there, and I think that definitely being in there um, was something that got me, I guess, back into um, believing in God, because I had grown up in the church stuff as well, um, and I had always kind of always believed in God, but I didn't really like know, you know what I mean? Kind of like what you were talking about, right? You just kind of go to church and you're just like,
yeah,
all right, this is what it is. Um, but I think after that happening, and almost dying from that, I think that is definitely the part where I was like, I that was like my spiritual experience, I guess, of really getting closer with God. And um, then after that, I kind of fell out again and just kind of, was doing my own thing. And when I was doing that, I honestly feel like that was almost just as bad as the stuff that had happened before of just I feel like, you know, I just always felt awful about myself, and I just felt like what I was doing, the path I was on was just not a good path. And every time I seemed to come back to, reading my Bible and praying and things like that is when I actually, you know, I feel like I'm on the right track again, and I feel like things in my life are a lot better, and I am a lot more happy and things like that. And I think I'm a pretty happy person in general, but I just think that that is definitely the part that got me really back into really reading my Bible again and things like that. Was just that experience because it didn't feel real when it was happening. When I was
yeah,
in it, I was like, the doctors are coming in telling me, we got to get this figured out because otherwise you will die, and things like that is, I think, really when it like finally hit me. And I was like, geez, like this is real. But I was so upset at the beginning. I'm like, I'm going to die, and I'm not trying to, do
hmm
this, but, I feel like I can't control my anxiety and things like that. So, I think that that was probably my experience for sure of just realizing that um, God was with me there. I think is what I believe, and that He was the reason I got through it, even when I didn't think I was gonna make it.
yeah. That's crazy. I didn't know that about you, man. I think
Yeah,
that's really a lot to overcome. And like we said earlier, it's when you have anxieties, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't, to a normal person or like a big guy like me, it's just like, well,
right,
eat the food, motherfucker. Like,
right,
but
exactly.
it's
Yeah,
just like but that's anxiety in a sense. You just can't control it. And there's just no, you truthfully have to get help. Like you just to try and process things a different way. But I think that's awesome that you found an external source to kind of help guide yourself, you know what I'm saying? And I think that's just my biggest message with people who a lot of people, for instance, like last night, the UFC fights, and they're like, before anything else, I just want to thank God he did this. And it's like, I think that's great that you have a person or somebody that you're, kind of flowing through you and giving the ability. But I think we're just shorting ourselves so much as humans. It's like you did that. You put yourself through that triumph and tribulations, and you got to give yourself a little bit of credit too. And so but I think it's hard. And so especially looking for external sources to kind of get you humbled, to get you back where you need to be, is tough. But I just always thought you were a skinny guy. I just thought you just
yeah,
didn't like to eat. But that and your Jersey Mike's just kept you solid for as long as you could.
yeah.
That's good. I'm glad you got over that because that's not fun, especially with anxieties and when they creep up. There's certain things I mean, we saw it all the time with people in sales. There's just certain things that just give them so much anxiety and they refuse to do it. And then so it just literally hinders them for as long as it takes until you can finally look it in the eyes and tackle it. So,
Yeah.
um, that's awesome though, especially and Madison's pretty into religion and Christianity and everything like that as well too. So
Yeah.
has she been kind of have you found more of a deeper sense with that relationship, not only being with your partner, but obviously being in a relationship with God as well as your partner?
Yeah, I think 100%. And there's been times where I feel like, I've been, kind of like I was saying earlier, I am not, a lot of times I'm not as active in reading my Bible and things like that as I should. And I feel like um, I need to be the one, especially in our relationship, to be the one who is, you know, actively doing that. And if there's stuff going on with Madison where she is like, struggling with stuff, um, being the one to really be like, hey, like, you need to pray about things and you need to, let's read our Bible together, things like that, because I feel like I do that a lot and she's the one to get me back on track to doing things um with that stuff because she's very disciplined in reading her Bible every day and things like that. So I think it's super important for a relationship, and I think that's also why when we had, you know, stuff at the beginning of the relationship, just whether it was whatever it was, arguments, anything. I think that that is a huge reason to why we're in the place we're at now, where it's just like we communicate really well, um, and we both want the same things, and that if there is something that comes up, um, that we are able to come to a decision on it, and both be happy in the decision as well too. I think has been a huge thing, um, because I feel like at the beginning we weren't doing anything like that. We were very undisciplined about anything.
Mm.
So I think that is definitely the number one thing that has helped us with all the other things as well. So yeah, I don't remember if that was actually your question,
Mhm.
but
No, it's awesome. I love to hear about you guys and your relationship and you have to have things that you can do together, right? It's and especially on that big of a level. My wife is a Christian and she believes in God and but I'm the complete opposite, but we don't ever stopped to like share feelings and share our emotions and how we're thinking about life and everything like that. So it's you balance like I said, your partner's your best friend, and so if you want to have a strong relationship with a god or an entity, then if you already have a strong relationship with your partner, it's just double down. It's just that
right.
much easier. So, when it comes to like the human existence and creation, obviously you believe in God. Do you believe then that we were created with intention, or do you think that He just kind of by circumstance or chance placed us here and we just ran wild with it?
I think definitely we were created with intention. I think that um, every person has their place. I think every person has their purpose here. Um, and I think that for every person, it's different in terms of what exactly your purpose is. But also, I think that everybody's purpose, not everybody really knows what their purpose is at the same time, like everybody's finding their purpose out at different times and really, you know, what they were put on earth to do. I mean, like for instance, I honestly don't really know what my purpose is in terms of stuff yet, but
Yeah.
I know that me and Madison just had a conversation yesterday that we got food and put it in um a bin for like a food shelter the other day, um and just things like that. I don't know, we just want to, we're not rich, but we want to be able to help people out, and whether that's going around to the homeless people and handing out um, sandwiches and a Bible or what it is, you know. Um, just going around, especially in our community, and just making it a better place, I think is something that we really are wanting to start doing, especially this summer as the weather gets nicer and things like that. I guess it's not summer yet, but as the weather gets nicer, you know, cleanups, things like that, and just I guess my biggest thing is even if I'm not talking to people about what I believe, um, at least them seeing like my happiness and my joy, um, and my positivity, um, seeing that and just seeing like, wow, like, you know, why is that guy so happy all the time? Why is that guy feel that way? And I feel like honestly, my joy really does come from um, the Lord, and I think that you know, other people believe in other things, even you know, it might be hard to, I guess, understand necessarily that you know that exact feeling, I guess.
Mhm.
But I really feel like that is why I'm put on this earth, is to, you know, spread the word of the Bible. And, you know, I'm not pushing it on anybody, but if, you know, somebody was interested and has questions, I would love to talk to them about it. And I'm not an expert on the Bible for any I guess matter of the word expert, but I definitely um know a lot more about the Bible than I did a year ago. I can say that. So you know, just I think reading my Bible and really learning, I think will help as well, and help me find, I guess, my exact purpose and why I'm here. Um, but yeah, I also think, you know, a lot of people will say, you know, it's not just about being, or it's just about like being just a good person on the earth and stuff like that. I definitely think that is an important part for sure, because I know I'm a very judgmental person, just whether no matter what it is. I think a lot of people are,
Yeah.
but I've really tried to work on that, um, and not do that, because I know that that's, no matter what you believe, I don't think that's a good thing to do. Um, and yeah, so I've really been trying to work on that lately, is just not be so judgmental about other things, because it's sometimes my intrusive thoughts. You know, I'm just like thinking
Yeah.
something and I just straight up say it, and I'm like, I probably shouldn't have said that.
Yep.
You know, so
I feel you there.
yeah, I yeah, I think that's really the gist of it.
Introducing West River Caramel Whiskey. West River Whiskey proudly presents their caramel flavored whiskey, a proud product of South Dakota. A perfect balance of high quality whiskey and smooth caramel, crafted to provide a rich experience with every sip. The whiskey used in their caramel whiskey is double pot distilled and aged for 5 years in American white barrels, creating a deep, refined character before carefully blended with caramel flavors. Rooted in agriculture and crafted with care, this bottle represents the spirit of the Midwest: hard work, patience, and authenticity. Whether enjoying neat, over ice, or mixed into your favorite cocktail, West River Caramel Whiskey delivers smooth, warm, with a touch of sweetness that lingers long after the glass is empty. You can get yours now at westriverwhiskeyco.com. Ships to Alaska, Hawaii, Massachusetts, Oregon, South Dakota, and Utah. I like it because that's one of the questions that this is a new question that I haven't put in the rest of the podcast, is what do you believe the purpose of life is? And because I think that's what everybody, it's either you believe that everybody has like a purpose, like you believe humans are here for a reason and the purpose is this, or you kind of go the other way where you think every individual has its own purpose. And I think it's hard to say there's not a right or a wrong answer, because I think that's a question that everyone asks themselves their entire life. What is the purpose? And maybe your purpose, like right now, it's me being a dad. And then maybe in 20 years from now, it's being a grandpa. Maybe that's my purpose, which is fucking nuts to say. But, but like, I don't know. It's so hard because like, it's hard to put just sentence or two together and say, this is the purpose of life. This is why, no matter what you believe in, we're here as organisms living the life. This is our purpose. I think it can be broken down by each individual. And even then, as each individual, it can be different. I mean, your purpose could change day by day. You know, maybe your purpose today was just to get better with yourself. And then maybe the next day, like you said, your purpose is to go feed the homeless and, you know, interact with people. And so I think that's just so hard. I think that's the $1,000,000 question that everybody asks themselves is, what is our purpose? Why are we here? And that kind of, you know, ties back in with the creation of intent, or if you think that we were actually put here with the purpose, or if you think that by chance we were just kind of here. So I think that kind of dictates where you fall in the line of purpose of life. Where like with me, I don't think we were created with intention at all. I think we're 100% chance, and that whatever took place, whatever organisms, you know, evolved through millions and millions of years, I think that we just got so incredibly lucky to be here. And so that kind of changes, you know, when you look at purpose of life. What is a purpose of life then? All right. So
Yeah.
if you say that you weren't here with intention and somebody's not trying to, you know, point you in the right way, then why the fuck are we here? Why the hell are we even doing the things that we do on the day-to-day basis? You know, honestly, when it comes to that, I just say I don't know. Like, I just don't think that I think our purpose is to live, and I think that can be encompassed in so many different ways, where some people are maybe they're fighting diseases and their purpose to live is literally just to fight. And other people, whether you have 2,000,000 bucks in the bank and you're retired and you're like, what's my purpose now? Maybe it's just to live. Maybe it's just to be around so other people can enjoy your company and so on and so forth. So when I think of purpose, I think the purpose of life is life. I think you just being alive is the purpose. And so, whether that's how you go about your daily business, how you go about your daily interactions, that's completely up to you and how you want to do that. But I think as long as you're trying to live and you are living, then you're fulfilling life's purpose. And so, and I think that's, you know, when people are taken too early off this earth, that they don't get to fulfill their purpose. And that really is awful. But, you know, I look like last year, three of my great-grandparents died all in a month, but it was like they were all 93 and above, and it's like but they lived their purpose was fulfilled, and so, while it is sad to, you know, go to funerals and things like that, it was also at the same time in the back of my head where it's like, I think they did life. They lived their purpose, so I take the more broad side of things rather than, you know, nitpicking at each individual things and, you know, because it's very easy to be like, oh, I have a talent at maybe it's singing. And then you're like, my purpose in life is to sing and make people feel joyful and everything like that, which is completely legitimate and it makes complete sense. But I think it's just those are gifts and you living is the gift. And so you being around and being alive is the purpose. And so you get to share those gifts with people. Um, but yeah, that's just kind of my take on it.
Yeah. No, I love to hear whenever anybody's got something else, because I'm a very curious person. I'm always asking questions. I love to hear it, man.
So when you think of obviously we were created with intention.
Yeah.
As a historical minded person, I always like to
Yes.
ask
Yeah.
what do you think? Do you believe in like the traditional Adam and Eve story? And if you do, what kind of timeline do you put that on? What is like the timeline for human existence? Would you say?
In terms of like how many years do you think like we've been
Yes.
around, type of thing?
Yeah.
So that is one thing that I think has been something that I have kind of gone back and forth with, um, because I do believe that I don't believe that, you know, we were just the Earth was just the Big Bang, and we just, you know, and the planets were all created that way. I do believe that it was the Adam and Eve story, but in terms of the timeline, that's kind of yet to be, because I've kind of gone back and forth. I've been like, oh, it's millions of years, and then I was like, okay, maybe it's, you know, thousands of years, you know, type of thing. So to be 100% honest with you, that's something that I haven't really, I feel like, pinpointed, you know, of what I actually believe about it. Uh, and so, yeah, yeah. What are your thoughts on that
Because that's always my question, yeah, is like, that's great if you believe in Adam and Eve, but then, like, well, let's put it into a realistic perspective
timeline?
or a timeline. When do
Yeah,
you think it happened? Because then that created civilization as we know it. Because if you believe those are our first 2 humans, then that's when human existence started. I like I said, I really like to look at evolution, and so like I've always said, in my spare time, I love ancient civilizations, understanding kind of where we've come from, how we evolved through time. And one of the newer things that I've watched a lot about is like Neanderthals and kind of how we spawned from them. And so I personally believe in the millions and millions of years of evolution, there was some type of human that just kind of formed in different ways. And so, like, if you do a genetic testing, every single person on this planet is going to have 0.1% Neanderthal. Like, there's just that if it goes back to our genetic coding, and that's a completely different species. You know what I'm saying? So that's where it's hard for me to put an Adam and Eve, who are the first two Homo sapiens that weren't Neanderthal mixed, because I don't know if there ever was. And maybe then people say, okay, well, then maybe Adam and Eve were just the first Neanderthals or whatever. Then you can go back Homo erectus and so on and so forth. And
Right.
so that's kind of where I fall in the timeline. It's like, it's just so hard to put my finger down and say, these were the first versions of humans, whether that's a million and a half years ago, 10 million
Yeah.
years ago, and then it just fumbled in. Because I think if you look at science and evolution, I think most people would agree that Homo sapiens, our final form that we are in now, you realize that that wasn't just cut and paste. Like, it wasn't just, oh, one day they just pasted and now you're human. It's like it's through evolution. Evolution literally made the human race. And I'm not saying it came from fishes or monkeys or anything like that, but at some point something happened where I think a specific species kind of spawned onto a new cycle and they created the humans. When that was, it's obviously very, some people say 130,000 years ago, some people say
Right.
70, and it's just very hard because we'll never know. I think that's the thing. There's no way to ever go back, find the bones of the first human and do a date and study it and whatever and be like, "Yep, there it is. That's the dates." I think that's where it's up to interpretation, where it's like, yeah, you don't have to have a degree to talk about things like this. I mean, obviously, if you have a degree and you're more educated, that makes sense. Um, it's just like, we'll never know. Well, I just don't think we'll ever know. And so, but I definitely fall on the side of evolution. And I know it's crazy to think about it that, over tens of millions of years, how many different organisms had to be alive, pass on their genes, and then continue to do that for millions of years.
Yeah.
That's crazy. It definitely sounds more appealing to say, oh yes, at one point a creator just said, hey, now they're gonna be humans, and I put these two here, and then that's how they spawned off. That's definitely a more relatable story than just saying, "Oh, well, it had to have happened 10 million years ago, and they just evolutionized through its own," and so forth. So, and that's like with looking at ancient civilizations. Even if we look at our modern societies, you look at cities and places like that, as a human race, they only give that credit to like 6,000 years ago. And now they're starting to find more things that are 10, 12, so on and so forth, where they're realizing humans did organize and gather and live together for, a lot longer than we've known. But it still goes to show, it's like, if you think the planet's 4 billion years old and you only think that we've been living together as humans for 5,000, 6,000 years, that leaves a lot of fucking time in between. Like, that's a long time in between. So it's like, I try and fill that gap of like, what do you think happened between the point of creation, whether it's God creating the earth to where we were joining together in massive cities with ancient Egyptians and so on and so forth. So, um, I don't know. It's tough, and that's the thing with history, is we're never gonna know, and that's why I think faith and history kind of go very close and hand in hand, and that's why when you study faith, you study the history of the faith,
Mhm.
because it's just you're going deep into that trail of trying to figure out the origins of everything so you can understand the present. Um,
Right.
but that's why I love history, because I just
Yeah.
don't think you're ever gonna be wrong. Like, if you're saying history from 50 years ago, yes, we can prove it because we had people who lived through it, so on and so forth. I don't like that history. I like the ancient shit where nobody was
Right.
around. They don't have writings of it most of the time. Like, I want to know. I want to talk and think about that kind of stuff because I just think it's so fucking cool. But yeah, I don't know.
I think that that type of stuff too is for sure, I think we've talked about this before. Um, the victors, are the ones who write history.
Yes, sir.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's like how much, of the stuff that we know now is really, truth as well, because it's like an entire or almost the entire civilization of whatever got wiped out and there was 10 of them left, and then the conquering, whether it was race or whatever, comes in and goes, "Oh, yeah, that's exactly how it happened. We were the best people of all time. We never,
Mm-hmm.
we only did this because of that," you just never know. So it's like, I feel like that is a hard thing as well, throughout history, whether it was, you know, even 300 years ago, you know, up or even 100 years ago when we weren't alive, there was people documenting stuff, but then you think about other continents of stuff happening on and who's controlling it in that exact space as
Mhm.
well too. You don't have cell phones, you don't have people recording things, you don't have things like that. So, and even nowadays, it's like AI is getting so advanced. There's some things on there that I'm like, wow, that looks super real. You know what I
Oh,
mean?
yeah.
So it's like, yeah, I think that there's a lot of things that have been for sure just completely lied about throughout history as well, because one person goes, "This is how we're going to make it sound," and you guys are going to keep it, type of
Yeah.
thing. So
Well, and I always draw it back to Christianity because I mean it falls in other religions too. For instance, in Muslims, the Prophet Muhammad, and they have the Quran, and obviously in Christianity, you have the Bible. What would those religions be if they didn't have any written text? You know what I'm saying? Because that's what dictates history. That's what if it's there's proof is because it's written down in a certain language that everybody can read. So it's like, what if, for instance, because obviously the Old Testament was in Hebrew and now it's been translated so many times that now it's in English and people can understand it in a certain way. But it's like, yeah, how much lost history do we have? How many religions did we miss out on because it was just passed down orally and then eventually the language died out? Where we got lucky enough to be in the era that we did that they wrote it down and they wrote the different stories and then it was passed on through generations. And so that's why I like to talk about myth a lot because myth is just, it's basically the oral tradition of history. And so it's really hard to neglect and not say that. And a lot of times when you look at the Bible, it is oral history, right? Where it's just people's different oral
yeah,
histories that eventually got written down into text and then translated into that text so people could understand them. And so it's hard to say that's not true. It's hard to disagree that, maybe that person lived that life or experienced those things, even though it was just an oral story. And it doesn't have, because it's all secondhand basically when people are writing those stories of what other people experienced. It's secondhand history rather than first
yeah.
person. So, um, that's where I've struggled with the Bible a lot. If I've ever read it or, in college, I took a bunch of courses about the Old Testament, late antiquity, and different things like that when they were starting to get the religion to flourish and prosper in the 300 to 600 era where Christianity wasn't popular. It wasn't the major religion, and they were trying
Yeah.
to spread it. And so it's basically their interpretation of different things, and they were able to write it down, scroll it, and then preach about it. So they used the word of mouth is one of the biggest reasons that Christianity is what it is today. And
Yeah.
so, that just makes you wonder how many other religions were that way. How many religions for thousands of years? If you think about the ancient Egyptians, for instance, every you can't go to anything in ancient Egypt or find an ancient artifact that doesn't have some type of god on it. But now they don't even have those anymore. You know what I'm saying? So
Right. Yeah.
that's what always drives me crazy. Is like for Christianity, how long will this religion last? How long will the written text go? You never know. Like, say 5,000 years from now, let's advance. Maybe nobody believes in Christianity anymore. Maybe because it was lost. And even like with Christianity, where it started as Latin, and only people who understood Latin could read the gospel and the text. And so that's why priests were so veered as like the holy person because they were the only people who could tell you about God. To now, where everybody you can go to a hotel and open the drawer. There's a Bible. You can start
Right. Yeah.
reading. So it's just so cool to think about how the historical events have transpired and taken place, and it goes back to it, like what's the origin story? Who created it, or did they create it with a purpose, and what is the purpose? So, um, it's I love these talks because it's like normally you talk about this when you're high or drunk or something like that, but it's like no, I wanted to do this real. That's why I started the podcast. I'm like, let's get the brain rolling when it's on all cylinders, dude. Why
Yeah.
not? But when it comes to religion, obviously everybody dies. Everybody that it's just a part of life. Do you
Yeah.
then follow? Do you think that there's a heaven and a hell? And if you do, how do you think you get to heaven?
That's a really good question. I was having this conversation the other day with a guy I work with as well too, that he does believe in God. Um, and we were kind of going over this, and I was like, to be honest with you, I was like, I haven't read enough of the Bible yet to 100% say X, Y, and Z about heaven or hell, because there's the Bible, right? There can be whatever. My Bible might have 1,300 pages in it, but a lot of people, I think, also read the Bible and just think it's just, like, just surface level type stuff, but you can literally study an entire page of the Bible, which I'm sure, I mean, you in college, you said you studied the Old Testament. A single page, and it might just seem, to somebody who's not really like that, you know, interested in it and things like that, a single page can take, you could spend a month just studying what is on that single page because of, Matthew was here. Okay, perfect. Well, he was here during this time, and then he had this kid, and this was what was happening at the exact time while this was happening in, Palestine or whatever, like all these different things, right? So
Mhm.
it's just crazy because there might not be, a million pages in the Bible, but one single verse or chapter, um, I'll watch YouTube videos on it sometimes of just the breakdown because
Mm.
it's not like you're reading Diary of a Wimpy Kid where it's, you're just sitting there and it's like, oh, he went to the store. Okay. Like it's so in depth. And that's the one thing I never ever realized before either was how in depth it is. And so that's why when I have been reading it, I've been reading it so slow because I don't want to just read through it and then get to the end and be like, okay, I understand some of the stuff that happened, but I don't really know this. Like, I want to know exactly what the 500 things on this one section are talking about before I even move on to the next because it is so complex. I, with heaven and hell, in terms of like getting there and not going, I think that um, one thing that I originally thought was if you are continuously sinning and you know what you're doing is wrong, then you won't go. But now I'm like, I don't think I believe that because we're humans. And what I believe is we are always sinning. And we know we're not supposed to be doing something, but we're still
Right.
doing it sometimes, So it's like, then it's like just getting so much more, you know, when I was realizing how in depth it actually is, I'm like, okay, this is going to be a lot different. And this is going to change a lot of my views on certain things as well, too. Because I was taught this as I was growing up, about it, but that's not what it says here. You know what I mean? So it's like, that's a hard thing is there's a lot of pastors that will tell you this is what it says, this is the interpretation, and nobody ever goes back and they and actually read it. So they take what that person is saying as truth with it. And that's another thing that's been a huge thing with Christianity is I mean, and talks about it in the Bible as well as wolf in sheep's clothing, things like that, right? Where you have these people who are saying that they are, oh, this is how it is, right? And they're teaching you whether it's LGBTQ, X, Y, and Z, right? And the Bible says something completely different about it, And so nobody's going home and actually opening up their Bibles and rereading what they went over and were taught, and they're just taking it at face value. And so, um, yeah, I know that's a roundabout answer about that, but I to be 100% honest with you, I don't know fully because I don't wanna say something, and then I actually finish the book, and I'm like, "No, I don't even believe that
Yeah.
anymore." Because,
That's
yeah,
fair.
I
Yeah.
and that's just the truth of it when I've had discussions with other people about it too, is I'm like, "Hey, I can only tell you what I've read so far." And one big thing, I hope I can say it on here, is with, I know is a big topic with the whole LGBTQ stuff is Sodom and Gomorrah. That story. I used to always be taught that it was God destroyed Sodom and Gomorrah because it was a bunch of gay people. That's the story I always hear from people. That's the story that I've always basically was even taught. And I was reading it and Madison was reading it, and I was like, "This is not even this is not even what happened. These people were raping every single person that was coming into the town."
Hmm.
They were, like, raping them, they were trying to rape an angel, all this different stuff. Like, I know it's very, very vulgar, but, like, that is what it says in there. It's
Yeah.
they were, like, the worst. They were doing awful things, sacrificing people, raping all the travelers coming in, things like that. Um, and God was basically like, if there is one righteous person in this city, I will not destroy the city. And happened to be that there was no person that
Mm.
was a righteous person in the city, and he destroyed the city. But everybody always would say, "Oh, well, yeah, he just killed bunch of gay people and all this," and I'm like, "Well, that's actually not how the story goes," you know. So it's like I never even knew that either, and so I
Yeah.
took a long time reading just that part to just realize, okay, there's a lot more to this story than there actually people make it seem, or people make it out to be, whether they're Christian or they're not Christian. So, um, yeah, I have a lot of opinions, I guess, on things, but now that I'm reading the Bible the way I am, a lot of them are more like, I guess, like I'm pulling back on some of them because what I thought and what I was told is not necessarily what's in the Bible. So,
Yeah.
yeah, sorry. I know that's I do a lot of roundabout answers about
No.
you asking that. So,
I love that because I think I connected that so much in the sense that, yeah, people just they take it for face value rather than doing your own research. They're just going to go, oh, well, Timmy said this. So fuck yeah,
must
that's
be
what it
true.
is.
Yep, exactly.
And it's really hard because, yeah, as a pastor, a person who gets up and preaches in front of people, myself included, who puts myself on the internet and says a lot of shit, it's like you got to be able to back it up or at least have some truth with it or, allow people to do their own interpretations. I think that's the most important thing. I think life is not yes or no, black or white. I think there's just so many different variations and colors and things that you can go through. So, yes, take it for face value of like, this is my interpretation of this situation going on, but do your own interpreting,
Yeah,
go read that certain passage, like you said. And I never really thought about the Bible that way. Cause yeah, I've read passages and like a lot of times you open a book and you think, oh, this is just like a regular book. I'm just going to, read through the page, but it's
right.
like,
Yeah,
no, and I think my grandma was one of the best examples that she tried to do just like a couple of verses a night, where it's like, yes, read like 5 verses and then basically read them multiple times and try and break them down of like what's the clear message here. And there's just so many. There's so many messages that go in through there. So that's why everyone has their own different passages and things that they like and don't like about the book. Uh, but yeah, find your own. And otherwise, and I think that's smart too that I like that you don't take a stance on it quite yet because you're just,
yeah,
that's totally a normal. But at the same time, it's like only everyone is born and everyone dies. So at
yeah,
some point, you're going to figure out what death means. And
yep,
so I think everyone has their own right to believe it. And because they're going to go through it, whether if it's something different where people like, say, for instance, I'm a male and I'm going to take a stance on a female thing. It's like I'm never going to be a female, so I don't really get that much of a say on it. But I think death is very different because you're going to die one way or another, and whether it happens, how it happens, when it's going to happen, it's going to happen. So,
yeah,
I think I think that also ties back into your purpose of life is how do you accept that fact? What is our purpose? What are you going to do from start to finish and accept the finish openly? Because I think if you look at anything in history or just movies in general or all the pop culture, like trying to stay alive for as long as you can, or now there's people that are like trying to reverse
yeah,
their genetics so they can live longer. It's like, guys, you're gonna die. It doesn't
yeah,
matter if you live for 500 years, somehow you crack the code, you're going to die. So I think that's kind of another big thing about purpose of life is that you have to find acceptance in that. You have to understand
yeah,
that death is coming for you. And so then that comes into the religious talk, is whether you use your religion to help your belief or if you don't. For instance, like with me with death, I don't think of anything of death. I think of death as just another part of life. Where it's like I think we're just another living organism that it no longer functions at some point in time. I don't think it's this big like welcoming to the gates or, thank you, my humble servant, for believing in me for so many years that now you get to come live with me for the rest of your life. Um, one of the quotes that I really liked, I listened to, Sahad Guru is his name. Listen to a lot of different gurus. It's like I think a lot of the times people get so caught up in the idea of death and how to achieve death that they
Mhm.
don't live their life. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Where people spend
Yes.
so much time trying to be the perfect soldier, be the perfect this, that, and the other thing, but they're not being themselves. So when they get to that final walk of life and they say, "Oh, well, welcome me into your pearly gates. I've been doing everything you've wanted me to." And God says, "Well, you didn't live your life. You never lived the way you were supposed to live because you were so focused on something else." And so,
Yeah.
I think that's why my religion is more appealing, where it's like you take it one day at a time, you take it one step at a time, and every breath is a new breath, and you just get to live this crazy dance called life. Because I think if
Yeah.
you try and focus too much on anything in life, not even death, but just to anything that's out in the future, then you're missing the present. And
Yeah.
so, um, it's not a good way to live. That's why I like to ask the question when people think about death, because a lot of times, if you're a Christian, you believe that obviously there's the pearly gates, and so you have to act a certain way all the time and do the things. It's like, man, just if
Right.
if you believe in heaven or a hell, I think that at the end of the day, if you're gonna get there or you're not, and just be the person you're meant to be. And um, yeah, that's all I gotta say about it, because, yeah, I think too many people dictate their lives or live a certain way that's not pure, and it's
Yeah.
not who they're supposed to be or what they want what they should be doing, and try and live a life of falsehood so that they can get to this magical place at the end of life. So, um, I always say you're gonna die one way or another. You're gonna figure it
Yeah.
out, and when it comes
Yep.
time, you're gonna figure it out. So, whatever you can
True.
make with peace with that, that's all you can ask for. That's all you can do. So,
Yeah, I agree. A lot of people too as well, just associated, with heaven and things like that is I feel like there's a lot of um people who say they're Christian who try to portray themselves as these perfect people. And I'm like, we should be the ones who should be admitting we are not at all. We are the complete opposite of perfect. We do things we are not supposed to do all the time. Like, and that's just the bottom line. We're supposed to be reading the Bible and things like that because we should be wanting to do better, but we are still not perfect. And so that's the other thing is I feel like there's a lot of people, especially um, like the age range of, you could say 50 to 90 years old, that age range of people where it's like, you know, uh, oh, this girl had a kid, she wasn't married yet. She had a kid before, and that, whether it's, the mom or the dad of just being like, I'm so disappointed in you and I'm never talking to you again type of thing.
mhm.
And then you find out that they were doing the same stuff
Oh,
before
yeah.
they had a kid, and it's like, well, one, you were doing the same thing. Not saying that I necessarily agree with it, but you don't need to not, you don't need to make that person seem like they're just the worst person of all time and what they did is just unforgivable and like Jesus talks about how um you should forgive people. You should.
Mhm.
And that's the one thing that I think is crazy to me is how many people say they're Christian and they never forgive people for anything. They will just be like, "Oh, nope, nope, you're not good enough, I'm not gonna associate with you anymore," and things like that, and I'm not telling you to go and just, like, be like, "Oh, this thing is great." I'm not saying to go and do that, but, you can not like the sin and still love the person, things like that, so, um, that's one thing that I think as well that I've really been trying to be better at as well is just not being like, okay, so this person does that. Perfect. It's something I don't agree with, but doesn't mean that I can't still love the person or, treat them good because they're doing that other thing. So um that's one of my big things as well as I feel like there's a lot of people that portray this perfect life and oh, me and my husband never argue or me and my wife never argue
Yeah.
we do everything perfect, and it's like then you find out it's like the complete opposite, you know, they're like physically abusing each other and getting the cops called every other night, you know what I mean? So it's like you just don't know. All these people, not even just Christians nowadays, are trying to portray like on social media all these different things. Oh, you know, I'm going to the Cayman Islands and I'm going and doing this
Mhm.
my life's just so perfect, you know, and all this different stuff. But it's like it's just a blanket over like kind of what you were saying earlier, just a blanket thing where it's like you nobody's life is real in this day and age. I feel like
No.
of when people are trying to portray it that way, you know. So I'm like, just be honest about it. You know, you don't have to say. Obviously, things are personal. You don't have to say everything, but you know, just don't pretend that your life has nothing wrong with it, and you know everything you do is just the right thing all the time because it's not. You know, so
Yeah. And that kinda leads into my next question of, like, what do you think modern society takes most for granted with human existence?
I think just life in general. Think that there is whether it's with everything, you know, I love video games. I love it. I love Call of Duty. I know you like Call of Duty. I and things like that. Even with things like that where it's like you're in a game and you're shooting somebody and you kill them in the game, they don't actually die, you know what I mean? So it's like I just feel like with things like that or social media, just I think just death in general, I feel like not just in our day and age, there's been, you know, even other generations where it was like, you know, they'd hang people in public, they'd do all these different things, right? Everybody come and watch. So I just think it's kind of the cycle in history of just people of how we portray death. Because I feel like before social media and things got bigger, it was like death was super serious. Like when
Mhm.
somebody died, it was like, okay, that's really serious. And now I feel like with how our society is and, you know, people being on all these pills all the time and whatever, and whether they're painkillers or they're, you know, depression, anxiety drugs, things like that. It just feels like people nowadays, for the most part, just don't really have the care, I guess, or like I don't know what the word is. Just they don't they don't take life as serious as like
Morality of life.
somebody yeah,
Yeah.
like people dying. I think somebody dying is, you know, of course, if somebody's getting murdered or somebody's 100 years old, I think it's a little different. But like, you know what I mean? Like when somebody dies, I feel like people are just like, oh, okay, like whatever, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Um, and I think if it's your grandparents, like you were talking about, right? It's like, okay, they've lived a long time. It's still sad, but it's not like you know somebody breaking into somebody's house and getting brutally murdered. You know what I mean? Like that's like I feel like when that happens nowadays, it's like people are like, "Oh wow, yeah, okay," and then it's like scroll on TikTok again or whatever. You know, it's like nobody ever cares, and it's just kind of crazy to me because I just I guess it's just crazy to me because I don't think that way. I don't know. I don't
No.
know. Maybe I'm the crazy one, but I just think that life is still so important, um, and that it can be taken away from somebody so quick, and people don't realize you don't respawn. You know what I mean? You don't respawn like that in Call of Duty. You're
No.
back from starting base, you know, and you're good to go, you know. So I don't know. I think that that is a huge thing is just life in general is taken for granted a lot now with just people doing whether it's for social media or whatever they're trying to show off for people and do a bunch of dumb stuff, or it's people flying down the road 100 miles an hour on a 30-mile-an-hour road and hitting a kid through a crosswalk, you know, or something
Mm.
like that. So I just think it's super important, and people don't take it that serious. I feel like.
You're absolutely right. I think one of the craziest things that I witnessed was the Charlie Kirk shooting, and where it was just like the fact that I mean, if you were 6 years old and had a phone and or you could literally have a computer and type in Google Charlie Kirk, you could watch a fucking man die. Like That's fucking crazy. Like, you have back when we were growing up, you had to, like, search the dark web, go to
Well,
Afghanistan or
yeah.
something, like, just
Yep.
crazy. But, like, now, dude, it's literally like anyone could just open their phone and like you said, there's car crashes every time. You know how many fucking police videos you see on the internet where people are literally killing like, the cops killing people or somebody's killing them, the police caught it on their cam, like, it's just so weird, and it's yeah, it's we've come to the conclusion that death is, like, fun, and it's like,
Right.
it's fucking not, like, it's
Yeah.
that's the end of an organism, and it's gone forever, there is no back, and that is a great point to yours too, is, like, when I've been on my recent health journey, it's just, like, the idea that I might not ever be the same again is fucking horrifying, and but it's the reality of life, that at some point, you're
Right.
just never gonna be the same, and so it puts a lot of perspective on life and where you're at and what you've done and everything like that. So, but it always comes back to the social media thing. And I think every person has always mentioned social media. So I like to ask, do you think there's anything that we can do as a society to like rein in social media or make a positive impact? Because I think everyone can agree that it is turned into this monster that no
Yeah.
one thinks is good. I don't think there's one person that would sit here and go, social media is perfect. This is the best thing.
Yeah.
I think everyone says that it's negative and that majority of what they see is negativity. So do you think there's any way where we can kind of try and rein this in and turn it into a positive thing?
I'd love to see that, but I don't think that's the reality of it. I think that, it's gonna stay the same or if not get worse. And yeah, I just don't I really try to not be on like, I don't have TikTok. I used to love TikTok, but I just scroll for hours, and
Mhm.
just watch all these things, but yeah, I personally don't. I don't think it's gonna get better. I'd love to be able to say I think it will, but yeah, I think it's another thing too that people are living in social media instead of living real life. Um, whether it's just going outside and going for a walk. Um, people would rather sit on their phones and scroll TikTok shop and Instagram store and buy stuff on there and like I think I'm an old man because I love everything in person. I want
No,
I
yeah.
want everything in person. I wanna go and if I'm going shopping, I'd love to go in person. Sure, I order a couple things online, but, like, I love in-person stuff. I love being able to get things, in person. I love, just going and doing fun stuff as well. Like, a lot of people are like, "Oh, yeah, my entertainment is I just play video games all day." I never do anything else. And I'm like, "Okay, I mean, guess it's fine." But, like,
Yeah.
I just wanna go out I wanna go and experience stuff. I wanna go and see stuff. I don't wanna see on TikTok that, "Oh, look, these people were in Sweden, and look at how cool it is there," and stuff like I wanna go, I wanna
Yep.
go to places. I wanna go hiking. I wanna go, you know, camping. I wanna go on the river, things like that. I don't wanna watch everything from a screen. So, um, yeah, I back to your original question though, yeah, I don't think it will get better. I think it's only getting worse.
Yeah. I agree with that. I think that it's just gotten to the point where it's just it is what it is, and so, and it's so disturbing seeing I think it's the youth that bothers me the most. When somebody like, you go to Walmart, and there's some chick that's gotta be under 18, and she's just sitting there doing TikTok dances in the middle of aisles, and, like, not even acknowledging that there's human life going around them trying to get their groceries, do it and they're just sitting there dancing and, like, trying the take 8 times, and I'm just like, "This is crazy." But, like, they're just in their own little like, they don't know how to live outside that phone. They're just like, "That's it. That's my phone. I'm gonna do whatever it takes to go in the middle of public and just make myself known," and that's all they care about, and it's not normal like, that's not what society was built off of. Society is to cohesively live together and to better everyone and everyone that's involved, and so, when you start to be a standout individual and not care about anybody but yourself, I think that's where we start to lose our societal structure. And that's scary. And it is a scary place right now where everybody's on social media doing having their own identity, and everybody wants to be an influencer. Everybody wants to make this, that, and the other thing. And it's just like, and if someone could turn back on me and be like, well, Dylan, you think you're a podcaster now? And I was like, no, I just think that the world has so much negativity going on. I'm going to put some goodness out there, or I want to ask questions that most people won't ask themselves. And so then when they hear the question, they have to go, oh, shit, well, maybe I should think about that once or twice in my life before it gets too late, you know? So, yeah, I think that's just the biggest thing is a role model that I can do is just try and put out positivity and good things into the world. Because social media is going to go on with or without me. Like you said earlier with AI is a whole beast. Like I've forever refused to get into AI because I was like, this is bananas. Like this is crazy. But then I started like I have Chat GBT and I ask it everything now just because it's like it will come up with an answer immediately. And it's just like it's so weird, but it's like we're gonna get to the point where we don't even need human interaction because we can get it
Right.
all digitally. We can
Yep.
get our digital, oh, I'm looking at people today because I'm doom scrolling. Oh, I'm talking to somebody today because my AI will talk back to me. And then they'll realize that they haven't left their house in months, and it's just like they have had no social interaction, they're not contributing to society, and it's scary, and but that's the world we're headed to if we're not already there. Uh, Even me being locked away and being sick, it's just like I've noticed most of my interactions are through a computer, and that's kinda scary too. But that's why I love doing things like this is because I need some more human interaction
Yeah.
because, yeah, you can get lost in the video games, you can get lost in the doom scrolling, and then next thing you know, you haven't talked to an individual, and it's like, we weren't meant to do this. We didn't even have flip phones 25 years ago. You know what I'm saying? This is not how humans are supposed to coercively live together, but that's the monster that we're taking on. It's warped our human existence into this crazy, crazy thing. So, um, it's kind of wild. It's wild to see unfold, and we're old enough to know where it started to where it is
Right.
now.
Yeah, it's
And
it's pretty crazy.
my kids will never know. That's the weird thing is, like, who knows what the world's gonna look like in 10, 15 years from now when my kids are, growing up, but they'll never know a world without it. They'll never know this will be their normal, this will be their baseline, which is fucking wild. It is so crazy to me, but that's the truth. So, you know, I don't know. But, did you have any questions for me? I know I said if you had any questions, bring them to the pod. If you don't,
Well,
that's
one
totally
of
okay.
them I was gonna say was just about the religion stuff as well, which we kinda went through that well, not kinda, we were on that one for a while. But I'm trying to think, I guess it's not even necessarily like, um, a question of on the topics we've been on, but just kind of, the Idaho stuff that, I was very, when you were talking about, we're trying to raise our kids with their cousins and things like that. That's really cool. Because I was gonna say
Yeah, we still need to check out. I've never been to Colorado,
Mhm.
and I so with Oregon, I love the mountains so much, and like it unlocked a certain part of me that I didn't even know was there, and now being back in the Midwest and not having mountains, it's like affected me way more than I thought it would. And so, and my wife too, we're both like, yeah, I think the mountains are an incredible, like, it's just something so surreal about seeing land in that magnitude and that mass. And so I think we both agreed. So she went back to school and she's getting her nurse midwife master's degree. And so
Oh, nice, okay.
when that's all said and done, she'll be able to basically deliver babies on her own. And so Oregon is one of the very few states that's super progressive in this, where basically, yeah, they don't have any doctors to deliver babies unless it's an emergency, where it's basically a master's degree specialist who delivers all the babies, who goes through, does the whole procedures with women. And so that's what got her interested is when she was out there, she had a midwife over her. And so she's about halfway through her first year, or about almost done with her first year. It's 3 years because it's a little bit slower course, but when it's all said and done, she'll have her master's degree, and they pay tremendous out west, and so that's kinda where we're like, we might just end up back out west because it's like, I don't think we'll go back
Yeah.
to Oregon. She wasn't as big of a fan of Oregon as I was. I loved Oregon with all my
Mhm.
soul, and I'd go back tomorrow, but, yeah, when it comes to raising kids, I was like, well, with Colorado, it's less than 10 hours away from Idaho, and it's less than 10 hours away from back home. It might be that perfect middle ground, and so we're gonna check out there, but, honestly, whenever she's graduated and she has that degree, we're just gonna just ping anywhere we can go and see because we both agree we need mountains in our life. We need a big airport and mountains.
Yeah.
Those are the 2 big things. Um, I know Idaho's airport's expanding, but some of those flights are expensive as shit. So those Idaho
Yeah.
airport isn't quite up to par what it needs to be, but it's getting there. It'll get there. But I miss the PDX, man. Kansas City's pretty good, but I think the PDX is one of the most underrated airports in the country.
Yeah, I agree.
It's super quick, super easy. It gets you like it's I love that airport. I love flying in and out of it. It was so convenient. And especially being only an hour away when we lived in Albany. So do you think you'll ever go back to Oregon?
No.
No?
No,
I
no.
don't blame you.
I love it here, dude. I know I've only lived in Oregon and here, but it's amazing here, and it's such a different world. I know I'm sure as well as, from where you live now to Oregon as well, America's such a huge mass of land that it's not like, in Europe where I mean, of course, they have different cultures in all the different countries there, but, you can bike ride 4 countries in a day, and
Yeah.
in Europe to where, you can go from Oregon to Idaho and it takes you a whole day, you know what I mean, and driving. So, it's just so crazy and just the difference of even only being 8.5 hours away, it's a complete different world, you know? It's a lot more chill here for sure, like just very more relaxed. Um, a lot of trucks. I'm just gonna say I think probably 60 to 70% of the vehicles on the road are pickup trucks
Mm,
here. Um, but you just have a lot more sense of community for sure here. Like it's a lot more family oriented, especially when the weather's nice and stuff like that. There's people just everywhere. I mean, you can't go anywhere without just seeing families everywhere and they're always doing stuff at the parks and stuff like that. Like they have a million parks here for kids, whether
mm,
it's a fishing park and things like that. Like there's just so much stuff like that. And that's really cool to see because when I was growing up in Oregon, it was a neighborhood full of kids, and then whenever I've gone back to go visit the neighborhood, I never see a single kid. And I feel like that was kind of a lot of Oregon though, as I never when I would be going through neighborhoods and stuff, I'm like, where are all the kids playing? Like, there's no
yeah,
kid. And here, you get the kids where you got the old people getting upset that the kids are out on the streets and roads and stuff like that, and that's what I like to see a lot better than, no kids outside. You actually see the kids hanging out with each other and things like that. So that is another reason that like, we would love to have kids here is
yeah.
we know that they'll have, it's a place where families really do come together and do things together. So that's a really cool thing about this place, and I know you've been here before, but it's it's a great place, and we have the mountains. We have mountains still.
Mhm.
So we got the ski resort. You can see it right up there at night too, as well. When they have the lights on, you can see it from Boise. And there's a lot of just nature stuff in general. The more north you go, as well here, it's super green. So it's high desert here, but then you go up north to McCall and things like that, and it's just beautiful mountains as well, sawtooths, things like that. Yeah, I was gonna say I really hope you do move here
Yeah.
because it's an awesome place, dude.
It'll definitely be on the radar checking it out. I know it's been on the radar for other family members too, so you never know. You never know where life will take us, but, um well, I always like to ask a bonus question at the very
Yeah,
end, if you're ready
yeah.
for it. I'm sure we've had plenty of conversations about it, but I'd like to reiterate. Who do you think built the ancient pyramids, and how do you think they were built?
I was gonna ask you that earlier, and I was like, no, I was like, I'm not gonna ask him because he'll probably be like, this is for another time. But that's a perfect question. Okay, so who built them and what?
Who do you think built them, and how do you think they got built?
Okay. Um, Personally, I do think there was giants. I do believe that Nephilim were real. Which it also does talk about that in the Bible.
Mhm,
Well, I mean the Book of Enoch is not in the Bible anymore, but the Book of Enoch talks about giants a lot, and it used to be in the Bible. Um, so I do believe that there was giants, but I also believe that I really believe that ancient civilizations were way more advanced than we are now. Um, I think that is the biggest lie ever, that we are the most advanced now
Mhm.
that we've ever been and everything. Like, they never talk about all of the things that they had then. They kind of have covered that up a lot, I feel like, and never talked about the crazy things that they used to have, when how they would even use stuff to cool stuff down, like their own refrigeration
Mhm.
systems type stuff. Like, they never talk about any of that stuff. So I think that um, they did have giants, but I also think that the technology that they had helped them move a lot of that stuff as well. Whether it was, people might call me crazy for this, but um, one thing is vibrations, in terms of like vibrations of um, from sound, water, anything like that. It's crazy how you can I was watching a video on it of, like, how they can move things with sound and
Mhm.
different vibrations, and things like that, but also just different contraptions as well too that they had, back then. I think 100% it was doable, with even though the mass of the rocks that they were moving, it was just, um, I just think that they were way smarter than when we are now. I don't know about you, but what are your thoughts?
I'm right there with you.
Okay.
I don't take the Giants route, even though Nadine was my last podcast guest. She said Giants too. So I've had 2 Giants in a row for the
Oh, really?
answer.
Okay.
And I like it. I like the idea because honestly, there is a lot of supporting evidence that says that there was humans bigger than what we are now. And I mean, it's no different. You look at fucking Victor Wembanyama. If they dig him up in 3,000 years from now, they're gonna be like, "Who the fuck is this giant?" Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't tell me that there wasn't people that just spawned like that. So but no, I'm 100% with the lost civilization aspect of it. I always like to say, from my historical studies, there was a period called the Younger Dryas, which was the last ice age, 12,800 years ago, where it is shown that the sea level rose up 400 feet, and that megafauna, whether it's human existence or mammals, just got fucked. I mean, more or
Yeah,
less. And so I think that yes, at one point we lost a civilization, and that advanced civilization, they had to start from scratch. They literally had to start from scratch. And so I think that the pyramids were there way before. They give it the 2,650 BCE is when they say they created them, which is only 4,650 years ago. I call bullshit. I call absolute bullshit on that. There's no way. And there's no evidence to prove it. So when I post this types of clips on social media, these get the
yeah.
most they get the most people like, "You're a fucking idiot. They've proved it 800 times." I'm like, "No, they haven't. There's no hieroglyphics that indicate any way of how they do anything." So you have to understand,
Yeah,
ancient Egyptians wrote down what they did for thousands of years, right? And so what they did is they never once mentioned or put on any kind of hieroglyphic how they made the pyramids, but they
yeah,
want to sit there and say, "Oh, they used slaves and ropes and pulleys." Second, my argument of that there is no mass graves. When you have any kind of slavery, you do mass graves because you think they're less than human, so you just dump them
right,
in a big pit. They've never found one mass grave. They have no evidence for slaves. They have no evidence for these magical ropes that somehow got 10 tons into 450 feet in the fucking air. So
right.
yes, I go off on people on the internet because I'm like, no, I'm not sitting here and saying that you're wrong, but I'm sitting here telling you that you can't just go with mainstream academia and just go, oh, they already solved that, so shut your mouth.
Yeah,
And it's like, no, they didn't. So I truthfully believe that there was an ancient civilization living there beforehand. And
mhm,
where was that civilization? I think they moved from the Sahara Desert over. So if you look at the Sahara Desert, almost 7,000 years ago, it was lush greenery. At one point, there was lush greenery. And so the Sahara actually has gone through 18 cycles, I think it is, of going from desert to greenery. And it happens every couple 100,000 years. And so about 7,000 years ago, the greenery started to evaporate and it started to turn into the dunes that we see now. And so the people had to move. And well, a lot of the ancient texts that the Egyptians have is that they acknowledge that they were not the first people there. They always talk about it. They always said that we were not the first, that they basically adopted the civilization that they came in contact with, and
yeah,
that 31,000 years ago was the original kings and queens of Egypt. And that's written all over the place. And when you go and do those ancient, if they dig up things or if they find temples, so on and so forth, or ancient writings, and like you mentioned, the book Enoch, I think mentions that as well. So,
yeah,
um, I'm very, very stickler on that. I think that they inhabited that, and the other supporting evidence is that Egyptians did that all the time. Modern Egyptians, so the Egyptians of 2650 BCE and down, always copied people, and they always put their name on shit when they didn't have it. So, for instance, the
Yeah.
best example of it is the tomb of Khafre, which is the biggest pyramid in the Big Three, where some archaeologist in 1832 was just digging on the side, and all of a sudden he found this in red hieroglyphics, this Khufu, and it's literally like 18 football fields worth of shit, and there's just one little part that says it's this big that says Khufu on it, or Khafre, and they're like, oh, there it is, that's his pyramid, now we can prove that they did it in this time period. I'm like, you guys are idiots. So if you listen to the general mainstream academia and don't do any research on your own,
Yeah.
I'm just like, dude, don't do that. So I'm all kinds of here. If people have said aliens, people have said giants, and I'm like, fuck
Yeah.
yeah, we don't know. We'll never know. But if I had to put my thumb on it, I would say it's definitely some ancient civilizations before us had some technology, like you said, that
Yeah.
whether it's vibrations or whatever it is, that they figured it out. And my always biggest argument too is that every single stone that was quarried 550 miles south. So if you want to tell me that they took ropes and dragged it 550 miles
Right.
and then put it 400 feet in the air, you can blow me. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah,
I
exactly.
don't want to hear
Yeah.
it. Don't
It's
want to
not
hear
true.
it. So,
There's no way.
but
Yeah.
no, it's my favorite thing to talk about. I love talking about ancient Egypt and everything like that. So, I always have to incorporate as a bonus question. Some people are like, dude, I don't know, but some people are like, yeah, I think it was this. I love it. I love whatever answer I get with it. So. Well, perfect. Well, Ryan, I really appreciate you taking the time, man. Like I said, I know it's not the easiest thing to do on the weekend to sit down for a couple hours and talk to the old boy, but I really appreciate you coming on and giving your 2 cents.
Of course, man. I appreciate you. Also, once you're done with the recording, I have something off recording I